want to talk tonight very briefly about ultimate liberation.
All right.
Ultimate liberation. Freeing of the African mind.
All right.
One of the things that we need to be clear about is that we have been trying desperately to get free ever since we've been here.
All right.
There has never been a period in our experience in North America that we haven't been trying to somehow gain liberation, to get freedom, to get away from the oppressive restrictions on our humanity that this culture has enforced. What has happened over the years is that there have been stages of freedom. You see, when you deprive people of their fundamental humanity, they tend to even lose sight of what true freedom is. When you begin to systematically rob people of their basic contact with reality, then they no longer are very clear about what is real. Under those circumstances, they then know something is wrong, but they aren't exactly sure what it is that is wrong. And because of the uncertainty about what's wrong, people then begin to engage in whatever frantic and frustrated effort they can to break free. So they look at the immediate restraint as a means of defining what freedom is. Now, for most of the time that we've been here, the definition of our life of freedom was fairly tangible. It was very concrete. We had chains on our wrists. We had manacles on our ankles. We had hoops around our necks. We had dogs restricting our movement. There were guns standing at the fence. There were very tangible, concrete limitations on our access to movement that made it very clear that something is wrong. The opportunity and the effort to engage in those things that other human beings engage in, the opportunity to be with our children, to be with our wives, to engage in the kinds of things that we had known characteristically and other people were able to do, we weren't able to do those things. So freedom came to mean getting away from the chains, getting away from the manacles, getting away from the limitations, breaking loose from the plantation, outrunning the dogs, outrunning the hunters, outrunning the bounty, outrunning those people who wanted to keep us in that condition, to get away from the whip, get away from the oppressor who was clear and evident by his physical existence. So for most of those 200 years, we did all we could to get free, but freedom meant getting away from the physical conditions of slavery. During those days, the Negroes were far and few between, because everybody knew they were in hell. Now, there were people frightened about doing anything about it, but they knew they were in trouble. No one had to convince them that their situation was a contemptible, degraded, pitiful, sad situation. Except for a few of them, of course, who'd gotten to hang out in the house and they thought they were what they were working at. But basically, most of the slaves knew full well that something is going on. Now, under those conditions, the pressure was to get away from the conditions of the plantation, and that was the definition of freedom. If we can just get up north, if we can just get away from the dogs, if we can just get away from the whip, if we can just get away from this mean cracker, then we will be free. So the concept of liberation was migration. Let me migrate migrate from the plantation in Virginia and Carolina and Georgia and Mississippi and Kentucky, and let me get to the free land up north, or to Canada up north. Just get out of this physical situation. So the concept of freedom was a very simple one. That to move from the physical restraint to a place where you had relative ability to move about. After the period of slavery, the concept of freedom became slightly different. It became one of, now that the chains are off, now that the fences are removed, now that the dogs are no longer put on us, now that you no longer have a right to deprive me of the ability to move, then it became clear that even though those things were gone, freedom still was not there. So it became a little less tangible. Even though you couldn't vote, and even though you couldn't walk on the same side of the street, and even though you had to drink out of a special fountain, and even though your children had to go to special schools and you had to live in special areas, the idea though is that somehow it was still less tangible, it was less clear, it was more abstract, but people knew something still was wrong, so they said, freedom means, let me participate. So they said, boss, now that the chains are gone, let me do some of what you do. Let me go where you go, eat where you go to the bathroom where you go to the bathroom. Let me live where you live, and let my children go where yours go. And our concept of freedom then became one of participation. And so for almost a half of a century, we worked hard to participate. We wanted to simply do what boss did. And if we were doing what boss was doing, we thought we were free. And we made lots of efforts to try to do what boss did. We prayed, we marched, we sat in, we walked in, we voted, we unvoted, we got beaten down in the streets. We did everything just trying to let boss let us participate. Because the concept of freedom then was just to be able to do what boss was doing. Then the laws got shifted again, and they began to let us do that. We could vote, and we could drink out the same fountain, eat at the same place, sleep in the same place. We really thought that now the freedom was here. Then we kept finding out something still ain't right. It still ain't right. So I tell you what, boss, let us be like you. We want to marry you, and listen, we want to go to your school. We don't want no of these colored schools. We want to go to your school, boss. We don't want to have no black community. We want to live integrated. No longer no participation. We want to integrate. We want to live right next to you. We want to pray next to you. We want to sing next to you. We want to do everything right with you. Don't give us none of this old black stuff. None of this old African stuff. I'm an American, boss. I'm a real American. And once we began to push for that, we didn't want nothing to keep us from being a good American. We wanted to fight where boss fought. We wanted to go to his war, live in his way. So the thrust then had gone from plantation to participation to membership. We wanted to be shared members, and we thought we'd be free. But then we found out that we got there and we were sitting there and somehow we still didn't feel free. Sitting in his school, still didn't feel free. Reading his book, still didn't feel free. On his television, still didn't feel free. In his plays, still didn't feel free. Everything we did still didn't give us the sense of being free. Because we knew that something was still missing.